This conference will now be recorded.
And let me share my screen. Okay, cool. So what will be the agenda for today? The agenda will be, okay, fine. So agenda for today will be, first of all, we will see HTML, CSS, and JScript. Some of the very basic stuff, what HCL, what HTML is, what CSS is, what JScript is. Then we will see some JScript demo from the browser side. Then we will see Visual Studio Code installation, Visual Studio Code plugins, Visual Code Studio Code settings. So what is Visual Code? Visual Studio Code is something, a kind of an editor which we are going to use for the whole this whole curriculum. And then we will see how to write the very first script, and then we will see something about the external and internal JavaScript. So that is agenda for today. So let's start with HTML, CSS, and JScript. So I think most of you are acquainted with what HTML is, what CSS is what JScript is. So actually, in a very simple language, if I want to say, like, there are three different kind of layers from which the whole web page which we have made is comprises of. So the first layer is content and structure. So content and structure is coming from HTML. So whenever we are talking about the content and structure, we are talking about HTML. So content is title, headings, paragraphs. All these things are decided by HTML. Then it's coming to the presentation. Presentation is more about the colors, more about the margins, more about the paddings, whatever. So all these things come under the presentation, and presentation is represented by CSS. So it's color, background color, border, all those things. And then it is a behavior. Behavior is how the web page is being controlled by the client side, or how is the behavior of the web page. And in the behavior we have a lot of things, like how user interactions are there, what we have to do if we want to scroll something, what are the different kind of widgets which are available, how we can dynamically display something. So all those things comprises of JavaScript. So that is a very, very broad classification. If someone asks you what is HTML responsible for, what CSS responsible, what JScript responsible for, and nobody is asking you in a very simple term. So in interview they are not going to ask you, oh, there's a content and a structure in a page, what element is responsible for that? And the question will not be framed like that. How the question will be framed? They will simply ask you, I am giving you a web page, a front end web page. So they will say you, this is a front end web page, right? In this front end of application, or in this web page, there is some title, right? And what I want to do, there already an alert for this web page, right? This alert is already there. And what you have to do is you have to change the mechanism of alert. We have to change the mechanism of alert, and then they will ask you what kind of changes you are going to do with this web page, whether you will do some HTML change, whether you will do some CSS change, or whether you will do some JScript change. So if you are acquainted with the concept, if you are knowing the concept very deeply, that alert is something which is controlled by the JScript, because it's a kind of a behavior. Alert is kind of behavior, right? So you can easily say that we have to change the JScript of the web page. So usually these kind of questions are asked when you are going for some interview, especially for the front end UI related things, automation related things. They are going to ask you very simple question to see whether you are able to answer them in a way you understand the concept or not. So the idea for these kind of question is to see on what depth you are analyzing the things, and what depth you are going to understand these things. Sometimes they are also ask you, we have a web page, we have a front end web page, and now I want to change the background color from black to green. So what kind of elements, or what kind of the content of the page I have to change, whether I have to change HTML, whether I have to change CSS, or whether I have to change the JScript. So you have to say, okay, CSS is related to the colors, fonts, backgrounds, and all other things. It's a cascade style sheets. So we have to change the CSS. So something like that. You have to keep this thing in mind, that JavaScript is always related with the behavior, and it is always related with the behavior of the system. And behavior can be to display something, to display scroll something, display the alerts, how the widgets are behaving, and how the user interaction is going on. So JScript execution from a browser, they usually, I have told you here that we are going to use Visual Studio Code for executing our JScript, but usually you don't need anything. So what you need for JScript is just your browser, because I think most of you are already acquainted with this fact that if we are going to the browser like this, if I am here in my browser and I'm going to something, anything, let's go to some site which says, uh, Isha Training Solutions.com. Let's go to this site. So we are here. This site takes a bit of time in loading actually. So we are here, and now we want to execute something in the JavaScript, so we can execute all those things in the browser itself, right? So what we have to do, we have to go here, we have to click on inspect, and under the inspect you are having this console, right? So whatever you are writing in the console, that will be executed as a part of JavaScript for this web page, right? So for example, I want to pop up an alert, so I will say ALER, and then you will give some auto suggestions. So these auto suggestions are coming from JavaScript, and what alert you want to pop up here is, for example, I just want to pop up this hi Isha, right? And then I'm clicking it, and then you can see there is a kind of a alert, right? You can see this alert here. So this is a kind of alert which is being displayed. So how this alert is coming? That's quite simple, because I am changing the console. So whatever you want to execute with JavaScript, you can write it here in the console, right? You go to the development tools and then clicking on console, and here you can execute whatever JavaScript you would like to execute. So you can execute all the things from the browser itself, but this thing is quite hectic, and it's not a systematic way of doing that. That's why we are using Visual Studio Code for executing most of the things. So in the same way, if you want to get this thing console.log, and then you can write test, and then you are entering it, so you are getting test in console. So console.log is kind of a system.out.println which we are using in Java, right? So it's that kind of thing. We want something on a console, so that you can see the test is in the console, right? So that is a very simple way. Even if you are not having any editor, you can execute the JavaScript from the browser. So how the browser is controlling the things, that is also very important to know. So we have different kind of browsers, right? And in all the browsers, so for example, this is IE, Internet Explorer, this is Mozilla Firefox, and this is Chrome, right? There's a one query from Deepak. Deepak is asking, let me see the query. One query, can we interpret and ask you the doubts would be taken at the end of session? You can interrupt me, there's no problem, and you can ask your doubts simultaneously. So usually I am taking the questions at the end, but you can also interrupt me whenever you want, right? Just ask your question in the chat. When I'm viewing those questions, I will be replying to you. So let's understand about the JScript engine. So I was telling you something about the JScript engines, and what was this? Because every browser, whatever the browsers we are having, in these browsers we are having a native JScript engine. So for example, this is Chrome, this is Mozilla, and this is Internet Explorer. Every browser is having a native JScript engine. So for Chrome, this is V8, right? Internet Microsoft Edge, it is Chakra, and Mozilla Firefox, it is SpiderMonkey. So whenever you are executing something in Mozilla Firefox, it is being executed in SpiderMonkey. Okay, and in the same way for the Chrome, it is V8. It is the name of the JavaScript engine which is responsible for executing the JavaScript commands. And in the same way for Internet Explorer, sorry, it's for the Chrome, Mozilla, and this is for Edge. In the same way, it's Edge, it is Chakra. So for every browser, there is a native JavaScript engine. And that's why whatever the JavaScript command you are using for a certain browser, that can be different or executed different for a different kind of browsers, because in different kind of browsers, they are using the different kind of browser engines, right? And these browser engines are responsible for execution of the JavaScript commands. So please understand this thing, because this kind of question can also be asked sometimes when you are going for the interview, that the way of the execution of JavaScript, is it the same for all the browsers or is it different for the browsers? So you have to keep this thing in mind, that the JavaScript engines in different kind of browsers are different. So for Chrome it's V8, Microsoft has Chakra, Mozilla Firefox SpiderMonkey, and that's why execution can be different in different kind of browsers. It necessarily need not to be different, but it can be different. So keep this thing in mind about the JavaScript engines. There is one question, and let me take this question. So Deepak is asking, in my project they are checking whether locator works or not in the browser console itself rather than knowing after running the script. Will you teach that as well? We are going to take this when we will learn about the tool. So when we are going to learn about this WebDriver IO, we will take this point. So right now it doesn't make any sense to make this point, because we are not talking about the tool. We are just talking about the JavaScript, because as I already explained you, first we will learn a bit about JavaScript and then we will switch to the tool. So the first 30% of the classes, 30 to 35% of the classes, they are more or less related with JavaScript. And once we are acquainted with the JavaScript, we will switch to the tool, because this tool is only accepting JavaScript as a language. So there is no other option. You can't use Java or any other language. Okay, so that something is clear. We have JavaScript engines, and these JavaScript engines are different for different kind of browsers. Now coming to installation of the VS Code. So this is very important thing. We are using VS Code for writing our scripts, and VS Code is a kind of a tool which is being used for writing the JavaScripts. First of all, we will see how we are going to install it. So I have given you a document, so I will be sharing these slides with you. You have to write me your email, and yeah, email is okay. And then within those emails, I will be sending you and sharing all these kind of presentations with you, a PDF document with you. So installation flow is, everything is written here, what you have to do and what you not have to do. So it's very simple. You have to go to this Visual Studio website. So what you have to write in your Chrome is download Visual Studio Code. So it's not, don't confuse it with Visual Studio which we are using for C programming or C++ or C#. That is different. You have to write Visual Studio Code, right? You don't have to just write Visual Studio. Visual Studio is something different, like it's a different kind of a tool which we are going to use for writing C# or .NET related things. You have to emphasize on Visual Studio Code. So there's a difference, Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. So you have to write Visual Studio Code, and this is the very first link, download Visual Studio Code, Mac, Linux, and Windows. So this is the very first link where you have to go, right? And then based on your operating system, whether you are using Mac or you are using Linux or Windows, you have to select that download option. So for example, I am using Windows, so I will download this thing, right? And once this VS Code user setup exe is completely downloaded, so maybe it's already downloaded under my downloads. No, yes, this is the Visual Code user setup, this exe. So once it's fully downloaded, it looks like this. So once it is fully downloaded, you have to click in or run it as an administrator. You have to accept the agreement, clicking on the next, and then you have to check these icons. So by default, these are checked. These icons are create a desktop icon if you want to create a desktop icon. If you don't want to create a desktop icon, you can uncheck it. And then add open the code action with Windows Explorer file contact. You have to check them. Add path, require the shells restart. Add open the code action with Windows Explorer directory context menu. You have to check all these options, and then you have to click on next, and then you have to click on install, right? And once you are clicking on install, this will be installed on your system. So I have already installed it. That's why I'm not installing it, but everything is written in the document itself. So this is VS Studio Code, right? And then this is the first thing, like you have to go for the Windows related thing. If you are using Windows, if you are on a Mac, then Mac, and if you are using Linux, then Linux. And then you have to follow the basic installation flow. So accept the agreement and then check these check boxes. If they are by default, they are checked, then it's good. And then click on install, and after that this Visual Studio will be installed. So Visual Studio Code will be installed. So how this look like is Visual Studio Code is in Windows, it's always there in your you have to just write here Visual Studio Code. So it will show different options like Visual Studio 200 2019. So this is something different. This we are using for .NET C#. We don't need it, right? You have to go for Visual Studio Code, and your Visual Studio Code will look like something this, right? This is the Visual Studio Code. So if you are opening it, this will be the thing. So once this thing is done, what you have to do, you will get this kind of icon. So this one, this kind of icon. This kind of icon is for extensions, right? So we have to download certain kind of extensions to make our work very easy, right? So click on this icon, right? And then here you can search icons. So you can see there some this extensions are already installed on my Visual Studio, right? So these are installed and these are recommended. So you can see these two kind of things. So what you have to do here is, first of all, you have to see these two kind of extensions. The first extension is live server and another is JavaScript EC6 code snippets. Okay. So what you have to do is, it's very simple. You have to write live server. So when you are going to write live server, you will get this kind of option. So right now this live server is installed for me. That's why I'm not getting this install button, right? If it is not installed on my system, then I would have been getting this install button. So what you have to do is you have to click on the install button and then this live server will be installed. Okay, so this is first extension, and the another extension is, I have also mentioned this thing in the document. Another extension is JavaScript EC6 code snippets. So just copy paste, you can copy paste it from here and put it there. JavaScript EC6 code snippet. So you can see JavaScript ES6 code snippets. This is already here. This is already installed. That's why I'm not getting this kind of install buttons. This kind of install button is not there. But if you haven't installed it, you will be getting this install button and you have to click on the install button. So once you are clicking on the install button, everything is done. So these two extensions are very much needed. Okay. So this is the icon for the extensions, and when you click on this, it is coming to your extensions. All kind of extensions which are there. So I have installed these kind of extensions. I have installed bracket pair colorizer, then cucumber, then docker, then feature syntax highlight snippets, JavaScript EC6 live server, remote containers, remote WS snippets for highlight for Gherkin. You don't need all these things right now. You just need these two. The first is JavaScript EC6 snippet and live server. The rest we will be seeing when we will be using our tool. So whenever I am teaching you WebDriver IO, I will be going to explain you what kind of additional plugins are needed, what kind of additional extensions are needed. But right now, just two extensions are more than sufficient. Okay. Now another thing for this Visual Studio is settings. So you have to do some settings. So how we can do these settings? This is your Visual Studio, and here you are getting an icon, this icon, manage. Under manage you are getting an option of settings. So you can go this settings, and under these settings there are some settings. If you are writing here, so you will get some settings, something like that, mouse wheel, right? So you can see that mouse wheel scroll sensitivity, and then mouse wheel zoom. So if you are checking this thing, zoom the front font of the editor when using the mouse wheel holding control. So it means whenever you are writing something and you are using the scroll of your mouse, the thing whatever is written in the editor will zoom. So by default I have checked it, but if it is unchecked for you, you have to check it. So sometimes it's very important for us to zoom something, like to see the zoom with the help of mouse. So that is one of the setting which you need for making the zoom. And after you are doing this thing, we are pretty much done with the Visual Studio Code. So its installation is very easy. Installation of the plugins is also very easy, and it's very swift and very easy tool for doing the things. So once you are doing all these kind of things, you are pretty much good to start the things. Shrisha is asking a question. Shisha is asking a question, sir, please repeat the mouse wheel part. Mouse wheel part is a kind of a setting. So you are going to this button, manage, and then you are going to the settings. Under the settings, you have to just write mouse wheel, and then there's a checkbox which you have to check. So what this mouse wheel is doing is whatever you are writing in editor, if you are selecting this and zooming the wheel of your mouse, that will increase the font. Zoom it based on the motion of your mouse wheel. So if you are moving it to the forward direction, it will zoom it as extend it the fonts, and if you are moving in a downwards direction, it will reduce it. So it is increasing or reducing the size. Got it? That is the way of mouse wheel zoom. It's not mandatory. I will show you once we are writing some code in C# that how we can zoom it or zoom out. So I will show you with the help of mouse wheel. But it also depends on you. If you want it, then you can have it. Otherwise, it's also okay if you don't need it. Okay, so that's pretty much about this about our Visual Studio Code. And now what we have to do is we will write our very first code, and we will see what are the different ways of executing the JavaScript from our editor. So what I'm going to do here is, let's exit from the Visual Studio Code, and now what I'm going to do is I am creating a folder here. So I am going to create the folder, new folder, and I will say it as day one folder. So this is our day one code. So for example, that's why I have put it as a day one folder. And when you right click on this one, you will get an option, open with code. So don't confuse it, open with Visual Studio. Perhaps you have not installed the Visual Studio. I am working with both Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. That's why I'm getting these two kind of options. But if you have just installed Visual Studio Code, you will not be getting this Visual Studio option. Visual Studio is completely for C# and .NET, right? Don't confuse into it and don't install it. So what we have to do is we have to click on open with code. And now you can see this. When you are opening it with code, you are getting this welcome screen. You can cross this. And here you are getting the day one folder. And under the day one folder, if you click it, there are three kind of options. We can add a new file, we can add a new folder, and we can add a refresh explorer. And this is collapse folder in explorer. So collapse is collapsing it, and refresh is refreshing it, and this is for creating a new file, and this is creating a new folder. So for example, I want to create a new file, and I name it as index.html. So this is my new file, and I'm calling it at index.html. As soon as you are putting exclamation sign in it, you are getting these two kind of options. And if you are clicking on first of the option, there's a boilerplate code which is already there for the HTML. So what this boilerplate code is, this is the bare minimum thing which HTML document needs, right? So this is the head in which we are having the meta characters, and then this is the title. Title is document. You can also change the title of the body, of this head, and then there's the body. Within the body, you can write whatever you want, and this is the HTML tag, and this is the HTML starting tag, and this is HTML closing tag, right? Language is English. Charset is UTF-8. It's a kind of a encoding scheme. So you don't have to bother about all these things, what this meta is or what this is. Pretty much similar for all kind of HTML languages. The only part you have to concentrate is we are having a head, and then we are having a body, and then we have having a HTML closing tag and HTML starting tag, right? And whatever now you are writing here within the body. So for example, within the body, I am writing something. I am saying div, right? And under div, you can write something. I will write, this is a demo page for webdriver.io, right? I am writing this. What I have to do is I have to save it. I am clicking on save. Now this index.html has been saved. And what I have to do is I will click here and then I am getting an option open with live server, right? This option I am getting open with live server. That's why we have installed the plugin or extension which is related with the live server. So once you are getting this open with live server, so what's happened is this page is being opened in your browser. So this is my browser, this is Chrome browser, and then you can see that this is the demo page for the WebDriver IO. The page is getting opened. Okay, and if I am going here and I am changing it, for example, let me change it. This is a sample page for the demo, right? And now what I am doing is I am saving it. So as soon as I am saving it, the same thing will be reflected. You don't have to do anything. So that is the advantage of the live server. Once you have started this live server, and once you are changing something here and saving it, that will automatically reflect on the live server. You don't have to again and again go to the the HTML, or you don't have to again start the browser again and again. Nothing like that. It's very simple. Just open it for the very first time, and then whatever the changes you are doing it, just save them from here. And as soon as you are saving it, you are getting the results. So in this area, we what we can see there, we are having a body. In the body we are having a div, and we are having some HTML starting tag, HTML closing tag. So now if I want to insert a JavaScript in it, so previously what I was doing is I was going to the console, right? And in the console I am writing some JavaScript commands, right? That I have shown you that how we can execute the JavaScript from the browser. We discussed about it. But if we want to execute the JavaScript from the Visual Studio Code, from the HTML body itself, what we have to do is we have to write a script tag. So as soon as you are writing script and giving it a tab, so this is right. So as soon as you are writing a script and making the script this closing tag and end tag, this is denoting that now you can write a JavaScript here. So JavaScript is always written with the script tags, right? So I have this script tag now, and if I want to write something here, I can write some alert. So this is my alert. And now what I'm doing is I'm saving it. I have saved it. And now let's go to the page. So because it's a live server, you are getting this alert. Are you getting it? So this is one of the way by which you can execute the script, right? So you can accept this alert or whatever. So that can be doable. Another way of doing this thing is you can take this script tag from here, cut it and put it here. So it can be after the body, before the body, it hardly matters, right? And then click on save. And as soon as you are saving it, you are getting the same alert, right? Let's change this to hi Isha learner, something like that. Click on save, right? And as soon as you are saving it, so let's wait for it. So you are getting it, hi Isha learners, right? So this script can be before the head or after the head. It's your choice. There can be another way of doing this script, and this is this way is known as providing a JavaScript externally. Externally means you don't want to do something here with the JavaScript, or sorry, with the HTML, but you want to create a separate file of JavaScript, and then what you are doing is within the script tag you are mentioning the name of the JavaScript file where your whole JavaScript is residing. So that is known as external way of giving the JavaScript that we are going to see tomorrow. So I think for today, first very important thing is you have to go on your systems, install the Visual Studio Code, install the extensions, and write the boilerplate code. So boilerplate code for HTML is, I already told you, give an explanation sign, and then this all boilerplate code will be there. And then try to manipulate it with some scriptings. So, script within the HTML itself, some alerts or console.log or whatever, and then try to see what's going there. Right, so that is something that you have to do today, and you're just going to home, install the Visual Studio Code and do all this basic stuff. And once this thing is done, we will see what are the new concepts for tomorrow, and then we will see the very basic stuff of the JavaScript for tomorrow onwards, regarding the variables and regarding the data types which we are having in a JavaScript. So that's all for today. But before closing this session, let's go for some of the interview questions which can be asked related to this day. So regarding the day one, what can be asked in the interview? So first question is, if you have a web page and you want to change the mechanism for scrolling, or you want to change the scrolling mechanism, which part of the front end you will change? Whether you are going to change the HTML, whether you are going to change the CSS or JScript. So answer is very simple, because scrolling of something, making a scroll bar, or scrolling the page, or scrolling mechanism of the page, this is a kind of a behavior of the page, and we already understood this thing at the very first presentation, that HTML is more or less about the content, CSS is more about the design, and JScript is more about the behavior. So if this kind of a normal questions are asked from testers, so they really don't require a very deep understanding of they don't require a very deep understanding of the concepts, but they require that what's the difference between the three and how these things are correlated with each other. Trust me, there are a lot of people who are coming with 4 years of experience, 5 years of experience. They are doing a lot of testing, and they are not able to answer these questions. They are not able to answer it because the concept wise, they don't know what is going behind the scenes. So this is really ridiculous. I really don't want anybody who is doing such a course with Isha Training Solutions. You can never do this. You have not to never do this kind of blunder. So please keep this thing in your mind, that HTML is related with content, CSS is related with design, JScript is related with behavior. Next question is, what's the use of HTML, CSS, and JScript for creating the front end? You can easily answer that, because the front end is based on the content, the design, and the behavior, and these three things are responsible for the corresponding things. Third question is JScript execution mechanism same for all browsers? I already explained to you. It can be same, it must not be the same, because every browser have a native support for the native JavaScript engine. For example, for Chrome it's V8, for Mozilla Firefox it's something different, for Internet Explorer it's something different, and for Edge it's different. So based on the mechanism how these JavaScript engines are built, execution of JavaScript in all the browsers can be different, right? It cannot be the same, it can be different. It may be same, but it can be different. It must not be same. It can be same, there may be some chances that some mechanisms are the same, but it must not be the same, because the engines are completely different. So keep this thing in mind when you are telling such kind of answers. What's the names of the JavaScript engine for Chrome? It's very easy, it's V8. Just memorize it. Sometimes these kind of questions are asked directly. What do we mean to execute JavaScript externally from the HTML code? So first thing they will ask, what are the two different ways of executing the JavaScript? So first way is internal from the HTML code. Another way is externally from the HTML code. Once you are saying this, they will come to the next question, how you can execute the JavaScript out of the HTML, not including the script tag in the HTML code, but rather going outside of the HTML code. So that we are going to see tomorrow. So any questions till now? Any one of you? Okay, if no questions, then I think we are done for today, and we are going to be at the same time. We are going to meet tomorrow the same time. So please try to be sharp on the time, because otherwise, if you are missing something, then it's a bit different, because I am starting sharp at the starting time. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to view the JavaScript. Basically, we will write some more code in the Visual Studio Code, and we will learn more about the some data structures, the common data structures, variables, arrays, all those things we are going to start from tomorrow. So please be on time, and let's see each other on tomorrow. Thanks for joining the session. Have a nice day ahead. Bye.